Hey there, my name is Josh Diotti here with Customer Relations, and today we are here to get you ready for delivery day. That's right, it's finally here. And so I am sure you have watched a lot of the component videos to help you decide if the product is for you or not. And so the goal of this video here today is to help educate you on how to use your van to make sure you are ready to go. And so slow us down, turn closed captions on, rewind, rewatch the video completely if you need to. Make sure you take notes, write any questions down so that we can best use your time here on delivery day. So with that being said, let's get started.
So next we're going to talk about some power in here. There are so many different ways to power devices in here. Ford added USB outlets on every cup holder. Those are factory installed. They're not tied to our system. So they are going to run while the vehicle's on, and then up to about 30 minutes once the vehicle is turned off.
Got it.
Yeah, they don't want you to kill your car battery, so they kind of limit how long those will run out. Most vehicles nowadays have a timer that shuts them off for you. Anything up front on the dash or above on that new cubby is all going to be on that same kind of timer from Ford. So again, not tied to our system, so running on just those factory kind of run times there. We install a lot of outlets in our van, like you would have in your house. So you would have AC outlets, 110, 120 volt, what they're normally considered. So we installed 6 of those in here, or 5 locations. So the first one's going to be on the ceiling right there, right where someone might add a TV or additional lighting, maybe a fan or something. So kind of flush mounted. There's 2 AC ports and 2 USB ports per location.
Nice.
So that's the first one. The second one is going to be kind of hidden behind your sink on the wall down behind it. So it's what your cooler and your water system are currently plugged into. The third set is going to be tucked over here around the corner there, just because of there are certain cubbies that we can fit these into with the factory kind of wall, but it's still allowing no cables to be pinched or anything. They can still be used there. So 1, 2, 3, and then we have a fourth one down here, real low. So the 2 AC and 2 USBs, and then at the very end and up a little bit, we have the 5th one. So 10 AC ports and 10 DC ports on there.
So what is plugged into this one?
One of your coolers. This cooler is currently plugged into that one. That cooler is currently plugged into that one, and then that one is plugged in behind there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a microwave.
Yeah. So to have these things powered like coffee makers, like hair dryers, certain coolers and stuff in our van, we need AC power. All of your batteries, whether they're AGM or our lithium systems, are DC powered. So we're inverting that DC into AC to power them. So this is what we're going to be using on our controller to power those items inside of here. Our lithium controller right here, and I'm just going to move this out of the way so we can see better. So the inverter and charger and everything is done through here. All of your kind of specs and stuff. Doing all right? Yep. So there are 4 major components to your lithium system in the van. We have our controller, we have our batteries in the back, we have the inverter and charger combo, and then we have the car charger. All of those items can be displayed on here, so we can see like the status, kind of what they're doing, and toggle anything on there. As far as waking this up, it's just a thumb press, and then we are just swiping between 2 pages we have set up for you. The only thing you're actually touching or interacting with would be this inverter on and off for wall outlets to be on or off. So the first line up here says primary, which is your primary battery system. So we see that since I unplugged shore power out there, we're at 99% charged. This will go down to 10% and then give you an audible beep that we are getting low. And then at 0%, the system would disconnect so that it's not harming those batteries or over depleting them. So over here, we're going to skip the middle one. This is the total sum of all charge and discharge from your van. So right now it says we are pulling 10 amps of current from the batteries. And since it shows a negative, it means that we are using more than we're charging right now in the van. So there's a finite amount of time remaining, and it's reflected right next to it on the time remaining. So it's saying if we continue pulling about this 10 to 11 amps, it would take a day and 5 hours to hit 0% there. So we are not charging from shore, we're not charging from solar, we're not charging from the car right now, so we're only pulling power right now.
And that -10 is what's plugged in.
This is everything being pulled from the batteries. So it is the lights, the dome lights, the accent lights, the fan, the inverter being on. Anything that's on is being pulled right now.
Okay.
About the lowest you can get this with everything off, but the system still technically on, would be about 1 amp a draw. So the cool thing is that every time we hit switches and change things, the current is going to change, and then the time remaining will be reflected shortly after that. So if we turn off like dome lights, we're not going to see too much, about 1 amp or so, and then we turn off accent, and you'll see that we dropped like quite a bit.
Right.
So getting close to half of that, and now our time remaining is just going to start jumping up. So now a day, 16 hours. It's always kind of a 5-second or so delay, but recalculating it for us. So this is kind of like the stress reliever, showing you everything you're using inside of the van, how long it's going to be like running for you. So if we are charging more than we're pulling, like you're driving or shore power's plugged in or just sitting outside in the sun, and this is a positive number, we're charging more than we're pulling from, meaning that this time remaining is just going to go to dashes, letting you know it's an unlimited amount of kind of time remaining. Yes. So the overall sum of everything being pulled from your van is up here.
Got it.
The bottom ones are inverter and charger related things. So this is on and off for the inverter, which is just the outlets inside of this van, those wall outlets that we pointed out. The next is showing you the state of that inverter. So since it's a combo of inverter and charger, it will just say inverting, charging, standby, or off, just letting you know what current state it's in.
And since we have freezer and refrigerator going all the time, the inverters for the most part going to stay on, right?
Yes, but those fridges come with 2 power cables.
Well, I thought.
Yep, they come with an AC or DC power cable, so you can decide what you want to put it in. They don't know if it's going in your house, your camper van, your Honda Civic. They give you 2 different power
Why
cables.
did you select AC?
Because they use very little power and they're easy to access. Yep.
If we wanted to use DC, what would that entail?
You would use the different power cable,
What,
and you would plug into that back one that you opened up on the back side.
well, behind here?
Or you could, but you would probably want to go in front of it.
Okay. Just on the floor.
Yep. Yeah, if you wanted to use that.
Okay.
So, it's showing with both of those coolers running right now, we're using about 100 watts of power from inverted power. This is only showing you from the wall outlets how much we're using total. Your limit is 2,000 watts. That's the max that it can continuously invert for us for AC power. So if you go over that, it's just going to beep at you and let you know. We have a whole bunch of like events and warnings put in the system to kind of protect the system if there's any issues. So if we turn off the inverter now, the device state goes to off, our output power is 0, the coolers are sitting on, don't have lights on them anymore, and we dropped a little bit of power. We dropped the power from the inverter being on, and then also what was being pulled from those inverters. So,
I mean, even if we had nothing plugged in, no refrigerator or anything, just having an inverter on in and of itself uses a little bit of...
About 1 amp or so. Yep, 1 amp and change. Just because it's powered from the batteries, then it's inverting it, then it's sending it to the breaker, sending it to each wall outlet. I mean, there is a loss of efficiency of it being on without being used. Not so much that it's using a lot more power is why I would recommend turning it off when not using it. It's just that you might forget something's plugged in that could be like turning on and off. Like the water system you have has a hot water heater inside of there. If you don't turn that system off, like it's constantly heating up with 1400 watts and then kicking off, kicking back on and kicking off. So this kind of like prevents me from, you know, accidentally leaving something on that's going to drain the batteries down. So, this page makes sense for you?
Yep.
Okay. So turning those back on, we're going to see the device state's going to go back on. Coolers below you now have lights on them again. We're like back and running from wall outlet power. Did not affect any of our switches. Those are all DC, like I mentioned, just direct to the system. This is just for wall outlet power. The second page shows more inverting info. This is redundant from the first, just showing you the state of the device. This is what we limit how much amperage can come in through shore power, which is AC. So you mentioned we have a 15 amp style plug.
Yeah.
We limit it at 13 so that, you know, if you're plugging in somewhere and there's something else tied to that circuit, you know, this gives you a little bit of wiggle room, you know, to not trip that breaker for you. You can lower it though, we just can't raise it above that 13 power. Yep. So you can bring it real down, like really low if you did have other things that kept tripping, like if you're plugging into a friend's house and they have garage,
tripping
you know,
their breaker.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, things like that. You know, if you have other things on the system, I mean, you might plug into a building on the side of the road that you found, you know, for a night, you know, just to be a little bit more conservative, we can lower it, but we don't raise it above it. That prevents you, like when you go to that campsite that you said that might have a 30 amp breaker only or circuit, that, you know, with that adapter, it's still only getting 13 amps running to it. The one next to it shows you how much is actually coming in. So this would be a good thing to check if you were wondering if you're even plugged into shore that has power. Some people plug in, assume everything's charging, and then, you know, are going to be running out of battery quick with all the heavy items they're pulling. So we can tell because the input current is jumping up, matching that, or low if we're completely full. The inverter charger combo is going to say charging on there when we're plugged in. It currently says inverting because that's all we're asking it to do. So those would be two good options to tell. And then over here, this would be way up there in the positives with shore power plugged in. And your time remaining is going to be dashed on there. So pretty easy to tell. And we'll do that after we finish this screen on there, just to show you that you are charging. The bottom one here shows us, we labeled it alternator, but this is your car charger. So you actually get to see what the battery voltage is of the factory car, which you don't normally get to see, which is nice. You have the output current sent to the back system when we're driving, and then just the state of that charger. So that module is pretty much the only place that we connect into the van system. And we just have a big red cable just laying on top of the positive terminal for the battery, and it's running all the way to that back system, and then we're viewing the info here. So when the vehicle's on, you're going to see this output current jumping up. You're going to see the charge state saying charging. So those are how you know you're charging from the car. The three ways you can charge: solar, car charger, and then shore power. The hierarchy of kind of the fastest charging is going to be shore power. It will charge at a rate up to 100 amps. The car charger will charge at a rate up to 50 amps, so half of that. And then solar, depending on the time of the day, since it kind of like fluctuates, with your current amount, you might see anywhere from like 14 to 16 amps on like peak time of day, 1, 2 o'clock, you know, clear skies, clean panels, and then 1 to 3 in the morning, 1 to 3 in kind of the evening. So those are kind of like the rate of charge for them. Regardless of whatever's coming in, it's all being shown on here, the sum of everything to the batteries. So there's a solar controller that shows you how much solar is coming in exactly, but there's nothing here that says solar independently. It's just calculated into that overall current. So, yeah. one button out of all this we're just turning on and off. Everything else is just showing you what's going on, how you can confirm your charging, how you can confirm, shore power is plugged in and working. If you wanted to, we can hit the edit and we can delete, we can add, we can move things around. So I got rid of one of those. It recalculates it to 5 or repositions them. And now I can select of those 4 main lithium components what I want to pull to this menu. So I wanted AC output power in watts, and that's dealt through the inverter. So I'm going to hit inverter, and now I can scroll down, and we're looking for AC output power in watts. So checkbox, hit OK. Now it's back on our menu here. We can add another page.
Your gear icon.
The pencil. The pencil. Yep. The gear icon for settings will be like alarm sounds, configurations, changing languages, lockouts and passcodes will be done through here. And then the very right one is just viewing any statistic from those 4 components, but not editing it or throwing it on the first page. So just hitting this means I can select anything like batteries and see how much current, how much temperature, like what everything is at through that. So alternator, you can see all that input voltage, output voltage stuff through here. So all of that can be thrown on here. We keep it pretty simple, 2 pages for you for 4 items. That should get you by most of it. So any questions right now?
No.
Okay. Some people ask how long does it take to charge, and it's kind of a loaded question, depending on what we're pulling from the van, how we're charging the system. But for some like quick math, when we run our charge down to 0%, that leaves about 20 to 25% charged with the batteries. That's just your usable amount. The battery is not at 0%. So we're trying to recharge 3/4 of the battery. So you have 400 amp hour battery system, that would be about 300 amps to replenish. So in a perfect world, our inverter is pulling in 100 amps, that would be about 3 hours time with shore power. From driving, since it's pulling in 50 amps, that would double that, so about 6 hours. And solar is going to just depend, mostly just keeping us kind of topped off or slowly replenishing us. But if the car is on and shore power, it's using a little more. If you're driving in solar, you have sun out, it's pulling in a little more. So the variable will change on how that's done, but that's kind of like some quick math as far as giving you an estimate of that.
The fact that this has the dual alternator, is that producing then more?
It is not for our system in the back. We have to kind of limit how much is coming back so that it's drawing a constant amount. The dual isn't just 2 regular alternators producing more power. They're smart alternators now, to where when you are full, it kind of like pulls the load down on those. And since our system's voltage based, it can pull it below a certain amount where it is no longer charging the back. So we have the device we use for that car charger is requesting a set amount at all times, so that we will always be charging the back system. They did that, to where now, like when you're on the highway, it's not just constant 14 plus the whole time with that car voltage. It's kind of going down as needed, coming back up as needed. And that's kind of made it a little bit more difficult with camper van conversions that are charging based off of that voltage. So it is just pulling at a maximum 50 amp for our system. For the car batteries that you have 2 of them under your driver's seat. And any accessory that you're powering through, those USB outlets and stuff in the van, those are all being, getting the benefit of that dual smart alternator. Our system does not send power back to the car either. We are only requesting it while the vehicle is driving, and then when you turn it off, it will pull for just a little bit until we reach like a voltage that we disconnect from it. So it might still be connected, but it's really not pulling. It's never going to just continue running until your vehicle is dead or something like that. So, so yeah, as far as this, do you feel okay right now?
Mm-hmm.
Thumb on, inverter on and off for outlet power, and we're just viewing kind of the state of the system.
Yep.
Cool.
Can I
Yeah,
ask,
that's nice.
getting back to the refrigerators again? Why wouldn't you just run them off of DC?
You absolutely can. It's
I mean,
easy
why
to
is that
just
even more of a standard?
because I can turn everything on and off with a button versus the 12 volt. It's just on a cigarette outlet connected to the
Turn them off
system.
here.
You'd have to turn them off here every time. Right now, I can turn them off here and turn them back on, and the coolers will come back on. You absolutely can. It's just for convenience of there being so many more outlets around the van than cigarette 12 volt style outlets. The car one up there can be used as well for cooler, but remember it's on that kind of while the vehicle's on,
Right,
and then
right.
up to a certain amount once
So
it
the
turns
DC
off.
power outlet's going to look like a cigarette lighter.
Yes,
Yeah.
the cable that comes with
Yeah.
it, yes. And remember, these are only pulling power when they're actively cooling. When
They
that-
go on and off.
Yep. So right now, it's basically telling us, I think that one cooler is actively pulling right now with that 50 watt draw. So other than that, it's just, having an LED light on there.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what they each draw?
It's going to tell us on the
Yeah.
the back of it, but up to maybe 80 watts total for each of them. Yeah. It will say on the cooler as well. Every device is going to tell you like AC or DC, and then what the maximum amount that it's going to pull is. So those are plugged into an outlet, and your water system is currently plugged into an outlet. That hot water heater inside of there is probably the highest drawing item in your van at about 1400 watts AC power at its maximum. So that's only for a few minutes, and then it will kick off. But while it's warming up, it's pulling quite a bit of power there. But yes, you can put these into that 12 volt. There's no issue with that. It's just for convenient of quickly plugging stuff in and having them on one button for on and off. The real benefit of putting them on DC would be like if you wanted to turn off the inverter, because this was literally the only thing you had the inverter on for these coolers. We could turn the inverter off, plug them in 12 volt, and then see those kind of savings, those additional hours of capacity inside of here. Anywhere you see this kind of teal and gray color, that is a lithium component. So from Mastervolt, so the battery, the inverter charger combo, and then that car charger down there. Those are the three components that we're reading on that controller up there from Mastervolt. So yeah, there are some lights that you'll see on here, but really everything's displayed in text what those mean on that controller up there. So over here, this is your relay with that yellow teardrop shaped switch.
Oh, I see.
It's an RBS, so its job is to disconnect or connect power to that battery system, allowing charge to go to it, or allowing discharge to come out of that battery. So if those events that we hit, like a low battery, hitting that 0%, this would disconnect, preventing that battery from over discharging. A fault in the system, it would disconnect. Super cold temperatures that could damage kind of the battery, it would disconnect. All of those things are automatic, and we call those events that are pre-programmed.
And it reconnects on that.
It reconnects automatically if we turn on the car. If we plug in shore power, brings it back online immediately. So that's all done automatically. We can override that if you have like long-term storage kind of set up. Like if this is in a parking garage, no access to shore, no access to solar for months at a time, we can manually disconnect that system, to not pull additional power. And Mastervolt says if you stored the van at 100% and disconnected that relay, it only is going to pull about 5% of charge per month in storage. So just depending on how you're using it, just reach out and let us know if you have any questions, and we can kind of give you the best kind of instance. It can all be done through that controller up there. We don't have to get in here for that relay for anything.
Something I've not got clarification on. It seemed like when I first started learning about lithium
Uh-huh.
a couple years ago, people talked about it can't freeze or it can't get down below a certain temperature, but it hurts the battery, and people talk about you need to keep it warm. And
Yeah, so
what's that?
Well, in general, lithium just doesn't. It can damage the lithium batteries to take a charge below freezing temperatures. But every component has a working temperature. They're going to say what the lowest temperature you can run down to is for something to operate, and then what the highest temperature is. So the lithium can be in cold. It's not going to hurt the batteries, but it's taking the charge if they're below a certain internal temperature will hurt it. There are tons of ways we have that mitigated. Like the battery has a heating pad on it that when we get down to a certain temperature, it kicks on. It would be using a little bit more power when that's on, but it's allowing that system to still continue like heating. But that has an operating temperature. The inverter has an operating temperature. The car charger, all these things have operating temperatures, and we've listed that on kind of a nice like winterizing your van knowledge-based article. But that general rule of thumb was just below freezing temperatures, lithium can be damaged if it takes a charge. So we mitigate that by the system would disconnect, not charging the batteries if they're too low, in temperature. But we have a heating pad that kicks on to allow it to run deeper and stuff. So all these kind of factors are all kind of automatic for you. But the most important thing is not focusing on the temperature inside the van, it's just the charge. So like I could turn on the Espar and warm up the vehicle and then allow it to take a charge. But we're focusing on what the charge percentage is on there, not so much the temperature. Just hitting 30 degrees, 20 degrees, 10 degrees isn't hurting the batteries. It's if they're trying to take a charge, it won't charge below those temperatures. So yeah. And we have a whole list that shows you kind of like things like that. Like I said, if you're storing it outside and you're in a cold environment for months and you're not using the van, you can pull the batteries out, keep them inside. We can fully disconnect them. We can plug it in. We can do a lot of different things to kind of like mitigate, those issues. So yeah. General rule of thumb you'll hear about lithium is that below freezing temperatures, they don't take a charge, that they will run about 5 times longer for their overall cycle count than AGM counterparts, and that they're lighter weight than a normal like lead acid battery. Those are pretty typical things, you'll hear about.
I mean, a simple solution sounds like might be just keep it plugged into our home if it's going to sit for 3 months in the winter.
Yes, but
and then it automatically heats it if you need it.
Yes, it will automatically keep that device heated. Yeah. But the inverter that's allowing the charge to go to the batteries needs a certain temperature as well. So that's when it's like, we could just, if it's a couple days or you just want to use the van, later in the day, turning on the Espar warms everything up in the van pretty quickly. But not everyone has it, outside. So then another option would be plug it into your house, but also have a small space heater inside of here, blowing air on this system. We could take a cover off and kind of get heat to it, but it's not going to stop the vehicle from working. It just, there are things that it's preventing it from being damaged, and you're just kind of taking note of that and kind of doing a workaround when needed. So you can absolutely leave it plugged in for 6 months and there won't be any issue with that being plugged in. There just might be times that it's not charging the van if it got super cold inside of here. So yeah, any questions about that stuff we just talked about right now? Okay, inverter and charger combo. It also has the specs on it right there. So if you forget, it says it's a 12 volt system. It is supplying up to 2,000 watts of inverted AC power. And then it will charge these batteries at a rate of 100 amps. Yep, up to 100 amps. So the lights on here do tell you what's going on. There's tiny little icons above them. Like this first green one says AC in, meaning shore power is detected. The next one would be inverter, then charger, and then state of battery kind of charged right there, or how much power is going to it. So it's all viewable on text. We don't need to really worry about those. Moving up, we have this device here that I'll mention, the CL305. This is the pre-programmed module for your rocker switches. Just telling them, how to operate, how long to run, you know, what they go to, but I mention it because it has a flashing red light on status. That means everything's fine. It's just a poor color choice from the manufacturer. Flashing red, everything's good. First question I get, or photo, if something's wrong in the van, is like that module, and it has nothing related to do to any of your issues, I promise. Moving up, we have our DC fuse block up here. So they're labeled, showing you what they go to. There will be a spare spot, you know, if you wanted to pull a fuse from to replace something, or just wire in something else to the system and expand on it. Yep, so like we have this 12-volt USB and cigarette charger down here, you could add another one in your van and, you know, stick it to one of those open spots on there. That's the positive, and then we have our negative fuse block right next to it. So really simple. Just mounting would be the only thing, you know, you kind of have to, you know, decide on. Moving up.
I'm sorry, and I was thinking about, there are empty ones you said?
Yeah, so it says on there, I don't know if we have a spare. So you could double up on something if needed. I don't see a spare one used on this one right now, but it does, you have everything being used actually with your setup.
Because of their conditioning.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, the one that says DC AC, that second on the bottom right,
yeah,
that one is usually the spare, since the AC is powered AC. And then below it would be a fan, so if you didn't need like an air vent, that would also be open. So, but that's the fuse block, and if we needed to double up, you know, for something, you can. Each of those slots can handle up to 30 amp fuses. So, you do have extra fuses in your glove box. You do have that same sheet showing you what they go to. So, up here we have our switches again, same as your side ones. Lights are on, but if I hit lights, it does nothing, just kind of wakes it up. And then we can hit all those to actuate it. Can you take it?
No.
Okay. So nothing new here. This is our carbon monoxide and propane detector. So there is no battery backup for that. It's just powered directly to our battery system. And then it's recommended to replace after 60 months of use. It says on there in super tiny little font, if you ever forget. It's actually the reason why we had to go to our electric forklifts, because the propane ones were setting off the vans on big shipment days. So we don't use propane in our vans, but we still have that because of things like that. Coleman, you know, cook stoves, or Mr. Buddy space heater, things like that. So we have the carbon monoxide and propane. Next to it, we have our AC fuse breaker box. So those are going to be 4 AC breakers for the 5 locations of outlets. One of them is doubled up on there. So kind of that first section, second section, and then like the 2 on that side. So they're lit up. I can tell you we have power to those outlets. But if I do that, now we are, you know, shutting off power to them. But that's just what would happen if you overloaded the outlet. It's going to flip. There's no fuse or anything. We're just pushing it back flush. So not really something you're interacting with unless, you know, you overloaded an outlet. We can overload the entire inverter if we go over that 2000 watt limit, but we can trip a breaker for individual outlets if we use too much from that outlet. Okay, so up here's our solar controller. There is nothing we are turning on or off for solar to work, and there is no settings that need to be changed if we're adding or removing panels from the van. Solar is not as complicated as a lot of people kind of think. It's a panel that's taking light, turning it into photovoltaic voltage, and it's going down in a red cable and a black cable that hits our controller here. And then we have a red and black that runs to our battery. Only thing we do slightly different is that solar that runs to the roof splits off in 2 directions, and it runs down here as well. So we are adding these 2 systems together for a combined like total solar input. This controller can do up to 600 watts total, and I think you have probably about 200, I think, on what's on here right now. Yep, so we could add more to the roof or add more down here. We don't need to make any changes to the controller. It's just working.
So add a suitcase solar panels. There's nothing, no spec we need to look at. Other than
Every manufacturer might change what side their
Polarity or
positive or
something?
negative is on.
okay.
What'd you say?
Is that what's called polarity?
Yes, the polarity.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so sometimes they just might have them reversed because they're which connectors they're using.
Yeah.
But most of the solar panels have MC4 connectors, which are those kind of bigger black ones that they use. But the port we use down here is an SAE. So where those MC4s go into an adapter to the SAE, they usually come with like a swapping piece that you can, like, if it was wrong polarity, you put that in place of it and it just reverses them to the right one.
It comes with it.
Yes, it comes with it. So that's kind of, an easier thing. So right now we don't need to use this button up here because this is for charging out of with USB. This would turn on and off an inverter. We don't use a Go Power inverter. We have a Master Volt, so it's not in use. Max Boost kind of just overworks the efficiency of the panels for the last few hours of the day, but we could turn on the car and in 10 minutes outrun like an extra 2 hours of runtime on Max Boost. And then, A and B would be for two separate battery systems we're charging from solar, and we are just using it to charge this one. So all we do is hit this B button, and there are 4 pages to display on here. First one shows voltage. That controller is going to be way more accurate on voltage because it's tied into the system. So I would not recommend that one. The second one though shows us there is a sun icon, so light is detected, and that it's charging our battery system. But not enough light right now since we're inside, so it's basically 0 amps. This is showing you second by second how many amps are coming into the battery system there, so I can tell like when I'm outside that solar is working. I see a sun icon, I see a positive number, we are pulling in amperage for there. If the battery is completely full, and you're outside, it's gonna be pretty low on there. That doesn't mean it's not working, that just means you can't really add more to it. But 1 to 3 amps in the morning is gonna be pretty normal. Upwards of 14 or so in the peak times of the day, and then back to that 1 to 3 in the evening. I leave it on this page. If I see a moon icon in 0 in the day, something might be unplugged. I didn't put something back in. That's kind of the easiest way for me to tell.
And if you doubled the solar panels, then that 14 peak of the day.
Yeah, it will go up. Yep. So the next one is a battery percentage. Irrelevant. I would use that controller up there for that. And then the last one is total solar added all time. Kind of cumulative, like a scoreboard. Every hour, it just throws up how much we have brought in, and it just keeps running up and up until you manually want to reset that counter back to 0. Not really used a lot, but you could compare like campsite locations, solar configurations, parking in the shade versus not parking in the shade. You could kind of like go a whole weekend and see what you brought in, and then change kind of how you do things. But for the most part, we're just leaving it on this one so we can see. Yeah. Remember over there, it's total input and output from the battery system. This is the only location showing you just solar by itself. You might see 0 amps on that or -2, but you see like 6 or 8 on this. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just means you're offsetting that 6, somewhere else in the system. So, yeah. So yeah, as far as this whole system over here, we just went through it. I mean, you're not hitting any buttons on or off for it to work. We're just touching the inverter on and off on that side. And everything else is kind of just, on display here. So, yeah, and you've already found the 12 volt down there. So you currently have, like I said, a cigarette style and a USB, but you could change one of these for like another 12 volt cigarette style, or 2 USBs up here. They normally come with like 2 sets of those. So, all right, any questions? Feeling okay? Sweet.